Hello and welcome to This Date in History, also known as TDH. This show is all about the events that occurred to date in years past, both recognized by actual historians, but many things that we personally find intriguing enough for us to bring to you. The sources of this information comes from the smart device application Today in History, What Happened Today in History, historical calendar, and the website onthisday.com, or onthisday.com, my apologies. For links to those sources, the music, and anything else we gather throughout the show that may or may not be potentially interesting, depending on your tastes, check the underbar in the description below. Hopefully that's more interesting than less. Anyway, I am A.O. Xander, and we might be joined in later on today, although Sohen is busy today, so it just might be a one-man show on this day, Freya's Day, also known as Friday, May 27th, 2022. We're going to start the dates off in the year 1096, which is 926 years ago, in which Count Emitio entered Mainz, where his followers massacred Jewish citizens. At least 600 Jews were killed. Dang. Moving on up into 1120, Richard III of Capua was anointed as prince 2 weeks before his untimely death. Ooh, that sucks. At least he was prince for 2 weeks. In 1153, Malcolm IV became King of Scotland. Alright. In 1199, John was crowned King of England. Alright, okay, cool. 2 kings. In 1957, Richard of Cornwall and his wife Sanchia of Provence were crowned King and Queen of the Germans at Aachen Cathedral. Was today King Day or something? What's going on? 1644, Manchu regent Dorgan defeated rebel leader Li Zixing of the Sun dynasty at the Battle of Shanhai Pass, allowing the Manchus to enter and conquer the capital city of Beijing. Moving on up into 1703, Tsar Peter the Great founded the city of St. Petersburg. 319 years ago. Man, still around today. Pretty cool. 1798, the Battle of Oulart Hill took place in Wexford, Ireland. The Irish rebel leaders defeated and killed a detachment of militia. Okay, so let me reread that part. Irish rebel leaders defeated and killed a detachment of militia. Alright. 1 year later in 1799, during the War of the Second Coalition, Austrian forces defeated the French at Winterthur, Switzerland. Alright. In 1813, during the War of 1812, yes, you know, it's one of the more oddly named wars, in Canada, American forces captured Fort George. 1860, Giuseppe Garibaldi began his attack on Palermo in Sicily as part of the Italian unification. 14 years later, in 1874, the first group of Dorsland trekkers under the leadership of Gert Alberts left Pretoria. In 1883, Alexander III was crowned Tsar of Russia. Alright. And then in 1896, the F4 strength St. Louis, East St. Louis tornado hit in St. Louis, Missouri, and East St. Louis, Illinois, killing at least 255 people and causing over $10 million in damage. Jumping up into the 1900s, in 1905, during the Russo-Japanese War, the Battle of Tsushima began. 1 decade later, in 1915, HMS Princess Irene exploded and sunk off Sheerness, Kent, with the loss of 352 lives. Dang. 2 years later, in 1917, Pope Benedict XV promulgated the 1917 Code of Canon Law, which was the first comprehensive codification of Catholic canon law in the legal history of the Catholic Church. Dang. In the year 1919, the NC-4 aircraft arrived in Lisbon after completing the first transatlantic flight. Cool. What does an NC-4 look like? Let's see here. Come on, let me highlight it. There we go. Copy. Move over here. Paste. Okay, this thing. Images. So the first transatlantic flight was made in one of these. With an open cockpit. That's scary. Jumping on up into 1927, the Ford Motor Company ceased manufacture of the Ford Model T and began to retool plants to make the Ford Model A. 3 years later, in 1930, the 1,046-foot, or 319-meter Chrysler Building in New York City the tallest man-made structure at the time, open to the public. 3 years later, in 1933, the New Deal saw the U.S. Federal Securities Act signed into law, requiring the registration of securities with the Federal Trade Commission, aka FTC. Also in 1933, the Walt Disney Company released the cartoon Three Little Pigs with its hit song Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf? That's more like a warning, telling us that they are the big bad wolf. Who's afraid of the big bad Disney? You know, look at what they're doing in Florida. Anyway, 2 years later, in 1935, also during the New Deal, the Supreme Court of the United States declared the National Industrial Recovery Act to be unconstitutional in ALA Chancellor Poultry Corp versus United States 295 versus 495. 2 years later, in 1937, in California, the Golden Gate Bridge opened to pedestrian traffic, creating a vital link between San Francisco and Marin County in California. Good. I've never walked across the Golden Gate Bridge. I've been over it like 4 times now, but I've never walked it. Moving on up into 1940, during World War II, in the La Paradise Massacre, 99 soldiers from the Royal Norfolk Regiment unit were shot after surrendering to German troops. Only 2 survive. Wow, so they surrendered and they just massacred them. 1 year later, in 1941, also during the Second Global Conflict, the German battleship Bismarck was sunk in the North Atlantic, killing almost 2,100 men. And this is after they've already sunk the hood, and only 35 survived, or maybe less? I don't remember. But, yeah. Death to the Bismarck. 365 days later, in 1942, during World War II, Operation Anthropoid, Reinhard Heydrich was fatally wounded in Prague. He died later of his injuries 8 days later. So, dang. Jumping up into 1950, which was 72 years ago, the Linnanmäki amusement park was opened for the first time in Helsinki. 8 years later, in 1958, the first flight of the McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II occurred. Let's see, what's that look like? McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II. Oh, that thing. Okay, cool. That's a solid-looking jet. In 1960, in Turkey, a military coup removed President Celal Bayar and the rest of the democratic government from office. 2 years later, in 1962, the Centralia mine fire was ignited in the town's landfill above the coal mine. And it's still burning to this day. 60 years ago, it's still burning, and it's going to be burning for probably another 200 some odd years, estimates say. Centralia is an amazing story. I suggest you go check it out. After this video, of course. Because we're jumping on up into 1967, in which Australians voted in favor of a constitutional referendum granting the Australian government the power to make laws to benefit Indigenous Australians and to count them in the national census. Good. They were there first, so yeah. Also in 1967, the U.S. Navy aircraft carrier USS John F. Kennedy was launched by Jacqueline Kennedy and her daughter Caroline. Sweet Caroline. 1971, Pakistani forces massacred over 200 civilians, mostly Bengali Hindus, in the Baghdadi massacre. What is it with everybody trying to massacre Hindus? Like, are they like the Eastern version of Jews or something? What's going on? Also in 1971, the Dalarö train disaster, the worst railway accident in West Germany, killed 46 people and injured 25 near Wuppertal. 4 years later, in 1975, Dibble's Bridge coach crashed near Grassington in North Yorkshire, England, causing 33 deaths, the highest ever death toll in a road accident in the United Kingdom. Dang. 2 years later, in 1977, a plane crash at Jose Marti International Airport in Havana, Cuba, killed 67. Oh, man. 3 years later, in 1980, the Gwangju Massacre saw airborne and army troops in South Korea retake the city of Gwangju from civil militias, causing at least 207 deaths and possibly many more. Eesh. 1984, the Danube Black Sea Canal was opened in a ceremony attended by the Caucasus? Is that the no, it's not the Caucasus. the South, I don't know. It had been under construction since the 1950s. Dang, so that's like 30 some odd years, give or take. Well, more likely to take. 4 years later, 1988, Somaliland War of Independence saw Somali National Movement launching a major offensive against Somali government forces in Hargeisa and Buraro, then second and third largest cities of Somalia. Jumping on up into 1996, during the First Chechen War, Russian President Boris Yeltsin met with Chechen rebels for the first time and negotiated a ceasefire. 1 year later, in 1997, the 1997 Central Texas tornado outbreak occurs, spawning multiple tornadoes in Central Texas, including the F5 that killed 27 in Jarrell alone. 365 days later, in 1998, the Oklahoma City bombing occurred, in which Michael Frontier, 48, was sentenced to 12 years in prison and fined $200,000 for failing to warn authorities about the terrorist plot. We already reported on the actual incident happening. This is just during that event. So this is not the anniversary of the bombing itself, but yeah. Jumping on up into 2001, members of the Islamist separatist group Abu Sayyaf seized 20 hostages from an affluent island resort on Palawan in the Philippines. This hostage crisis would not be resolved until June of 2002. Dang. Moving on up into 2006, the 6.4 MW Yogyakarta earthquake shook central Java with an MSK intensity of 7, damaging, leaving more than 5,700 dead and 37,000 injured. I'm sorry. See, this is why I have co-hosts, or why I used to edit the show back in the day, so I can have water breaks, because constant talking, your mouth gets all dry, and I have no idea how the filibusters do it. The longest filibuster was over 24 hours long. How do you talk for 24 hours continuously without hydrating, without putting the water back in your mouth? That's insane. Anyway, speaking of filibusters, in 2016, Barack Obama was the first president of the United States to visit Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park and meet Hibakusha, whoever that is. Who is this guy? Hibakusha. Wait, was that the guy who survived both atomic blasts? Hibakusha is a word of Japanese origin generally designated the people affected by the atomic bomb. Okay, so he was the first one to visit, to meet with those people, the people who were alive and seemed to have gotten some radiation poisoning and burns and all that jazz. So I'm going to add that to the underbar. Alright, let's move on up into 2017, in which it saw Andrew Scheer took over after Rona Ambrose as a leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. Alright. And then a mere 4 years ago, in 2018, the Maryland flood event occurred, in which, throughout the Patapsco Valley, caused one death and destroyed the entirety of first floors of buildings on Main Street in Ellicott City, and causing cars to overturn. Okay. Typical flood behavior and such. Only one death, though, so, that's a bad thing, a good thing, depends on things. Anyway, moving on up into bursts. In the year 742, Emperor Dezong of Tang, would later go on to die in 805. Doing a 1,000 or over 1,000 years of a time jump here, in 1794, Cornelius Vanderbilt was an American businessman and philanthropist, dying in 1877. 1837, Wild Bill Hickok was an American police officer who died in 1876. So that's what? 39 years, I think, if my math is correct. Jumping on up into 1864, Arthur Mould was an English cricketer, dying in 1921. I wonder if he grew, like mold. I don't know. 1875, Frederick Cumming was an English cricketer, dying in 1942. What an unfortunate last name there. In 1897, we have Dink Templeton, was an American rugby player and coach, dying in 1962. Who names your kid Dink? You know? 1898, David Crosthwaite was an American engineer, inventor, and writer, dying in 1976. What did he invent? Let's look at that. An invention. Alright. He invented an improved boiler system, a new thermostat control, and other items with the goal of making the ventilation systems in larger buildings more effective. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, guy. Let's see here. I'm gonna get this guy's wiki right here. All right, add this to the underbar. Come on, there it is. Okay, who else was born on this date? 1900, Lotte Toberentz, yeah, was a German overseer of the Nazi Uckermark concentration camp, dying in 1964. 1922, Christopher Lee was an English actor, dying in 2015. And why is that name so familiar? I should know this. Ah, that's right. He was the guy who played that dude. Okay. Oh, he was also in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Oh, yeah, that's right. He was Count Dooku. Okay. Wow, he died in 2015? That sucks. Anyway, 1923, Henry Kissinger was a German U.S. globalist, elitist, political scientist, and politician who was the 56th United States Secretary of State. 1924, John Summer was an English-Australian director who founded the Melbourne Theatre Company, dying in 2013. 1935, Mel Evans was born on this date. He was the British road manager of the Beatles, dying in 1976. 1944, Alain Souchon was a French singer-songwriter, guitarist, and actor. Then 1945, Bruce Cockburn, Canadian singer-songwriter and guitarist. Happy birthday, Mr. Horrible last name. 1947, Marty Christian, German-Australian singer-songwriter, guitarist, and actor. 1948, Morning Glory Zell Ravenheart was a U.S. occultist and author, dying in 2014. That could not be her actual name, but, no, Diana Moore was her actual name. But then she decided to change it because, yeah, very much like how Meta World Peace and all that crap, they like to change their names and such. Anyway, 1950, Dee Bridgewater is a U.S. singer-songwriter and actress. 1955, Richard Schiff is a U.S. actor, director, and producer, and that name is familiar, so let me look him up real quick. Richard Schiff. He was in The Lost World, he was in The Rival, The West Wing. Why can't... Richard Schiff. Why is that face so familiar? I'm really very uneducated about actors and such, so... Anyway, 1956, Rosemary Squire is an English producer and manager who co-founded Ambassador Theatre Group. 1957, Siu, English singer, songwriter, musician, and producer. 1962, Stephen Brill is a U.S. actor, director, producer, and screenwriter. 1964, we have Adam Carolla is a U.S. actor, producer, and screenwriter, born on this date. Now, why is that name sound so familiar? Adam Carolla, like, oh yeah, The Man Show. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, he was on Comedy Central. What was that, Insomnia one? Insomnia with Stephen Carell? What was that show? Steve Carell? And Amy Tongues. Well, I don't know. I guess I'm just remembering things wrong. Anyway, moving on up. More births today. 1973, Yorgos Lanthimos is a Greek film, video, and theater director, producer, and screenwriter. Then 1975, Jamie Oliver is an English chef and author, and rival to Gordon Ramsay. 1975 as well, we have Feryal Özel is a Turkish astrophysicist, astronomer, and academic who was part of the Black Hole Photo team. Then 1986, Connor Cummins is a Manx motorcycle racer. What's Manx? Manx. It's a language. Okay. Oh, wait. It's in... Oh, it's a little island in the middle of the British Isles. Okay, so that's where Manx. Alright. And then 1989, Peak Boy was born on the States. He's a South Korean rapper, record producer, and singer-songwriter, and his actual name is Kwon Sung Hwan. So let's see here. So let's copy that. Post that here. AKA. Alright. Happy birthday to all of those names, living or dead. Moving on up into deaths. Starting us off in 366, we have Procopius, was a Roman usurper, having been born in 325. 927, Simeon I of Bulgaria was the first Bulgarian emperor, having been born in 864. Jumping on up into 1444, John Beaufort, 1st Duke of Somerset, died on the States. He was an English commander, having been born in 1404. So he lived for 40 years. Nice. In 1637, John Boteler, 1st Baron Boteler of Brantfield, was an English politician. Birth was in 1566. And once again, these BC things, is that christening or something? I don't know. If anybody knows what that means, somebody tell me. 1661, Archibald Campbell, 1st Marquis of Argyll, was a Scottish general and politician. 1831, Jebediah Smith died on the States. He was an American hunter, explorer, and author, having been born in 1799. 1867, Thomas Bulfinch was an American mythologist, having been born in 1796. What is a mythologist? Mythology is an expert in or student of mythology, a writer or editor of myths. Okay, well, that's pretty self-explanatory. 1949, Robert Ripley was a U.S. cartoonist, publisher, and businessman who founded Ripley's Believe It or Not, having been born in 1890. I love that show, and I love those books. 1964, we have Jawaharlal Nehru, was an Indian lawyer and politician who is the first Prime Minister of India, having been born in 1889. 1971, Bela Juhos, Hungarian-Austrian philosopher from the Vienna Circle, having been born in 1901. 1980, Gun Sazak died on the States. He was a Turkish agronomist and politician, having been born in 1932. What is an agronomist? Is an expert in the science of soil management and crop production. Okay. 1984, Eric Morecambe was a comedian, actor, entertainer, and singer. He was born in 1926. 1992, we have Uncle Charlie Osborne, was a U.S. fiddler, having been born in 1890. His actual name was Charles Nelson Osborne. So let's add that to... keep hitting the wrong one. There we go. Copy. There we go. Paste, aka. Then in 2007, we have Ed Yost, the U.S. inventor of the hot air balloon, having been born in 1919. Now, I thought the Montgolfier brothers in France invented the hot air balloon. So, I don't know. I was going to banter with Sohan, but he's not here today. So, I guess we're just going to have to wait till next year. 2 years later, in 2009, Mona Gray died on the States. She was a British nursing administrator who was Northern Ireland's first chief nursing officer. What year was she born though? Mona Gray wiki. Mona Gray. Is this the same one? Okay. All right. 24th of September 1910. She was born in 1910. Born 1910. Save. 2010, we have Payut Nagagarkaraba, was a Thai animator and director, having been born in 1929. 2012, Simeon Daniel died on this date. He was a Nevisian educator and politician who was the first premier of Nevis. He was born in 1934. What is Nevis? Let's check that out real quick. Nevis. It is an island in the Caribbean. Okay. Cool. Then last but not least, 2015, we have Nils Christie, was a Norwegian sociologist, criminologist, and author. He was born in 1928. That's about it for the show today. Once again, check the underbar for any links that you may be interested in, which also includes SoNTV on Twitch and everything Omni Coalition. Go check all that stuff out. We are going to be switching streaming platforms to our Rumble this Sunday. Starting a new week, a new chapter in this thing. Because of YouTube's doing us dirty. Oh, damn you, Google. Damn you, Alphabet Corporation. Don't be evil, or do the right thing, my ass. Anyway, for your dose of Passive Events Daily, we stream every day between 12 noon and 3 p.m. Pacific Time. Well, that's going to end after tomorrow. Which we're going to start streaming at 10 in the morning Pacific Time, which is noon Central Time. For all of you and all of us, I am A.O. Xander, and you are you, and until you see us tomorrow, don't forget to look right and left at every intersection, rate 5 thumbs, and subscribe. Until then, toodles! Let's go, Brandon.